This episode of the Fine Homebuilding Podcast is brought to you by Andersen Windows. If you're a window installer, you deserve a simple choice: Andersen 400 Series windows. They're the windows contractors trust the most, based on a 2022 survey of U.S. contractors. Probably because they have fewer callbacks and extra peace of mind. And thanks to shortened lead times, they're available faster. Make your go-to windows Andersen 400 Series. Request a quote at andersenwindows.com. Also brought to you by Loctite PL Premium Max. Professional builders know the value of a durable and versatile construction adhesive. Say no to second-guessing quality. Say yes to Loctite's strongest adhesive, PL Premium Max. Equally effective for interior and exterior use. PL Premium Max can be applied in all but the most extreme weather conditions and bonds to all common building materials. It offers 20 minutes of working time and cures solid in 24 hours, with no air bubbles for maximum durability. Whether you're framing a custom home, upgrading to granite kitchen counters, or adding rigid foam and comfort to an existing basement, PL Premium Max is the right adhesive for the job. Say yes to Loctite's strongest construction adhesive. Visit LoctiteProducts.com for more information.
The brutality of this is unbearable to me. Like, anyone who's run a postal digger knows that the best part is that first foot or two where you have good leverage and you can really move fast. Having to chase the Toro auger for that last 6 inches.
Welcome to the Fine Homebuilding Podcast, our regular discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Travis Brungard of Catalyst Construction.
Good morning.
Operations Manager for TDS Custom Construction, Ian Schwant.
Hello.
And producer Jeff Rose.
Hi there.
You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Please email us your questions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. Well, it's a pleasure to see you guys this morning. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you.
Glad to be back.
Travis, it is a pleasure, especially to have you as our special guest. Can you tell us, you have a number of events coming up. Let's touch on them now, and then let's talk more about them in the after show. But can you please give us a brief rundown of the Midwest Building Science Symposium?
It would be my pleasure. Yeah, we're really excited about bringing it for the third year to Kansas City, where you and Rob were with us last year at Boulevard Brewery. Same venue, same 2-day event, with some of the same speakers, but all new content. And that's taking place September 14th and 15th in Kansas City. That's the Midwest Building Science Symposium. We also are announcing in October on the 12th and 13th that we'll be doing the expanded event. Includes 4 different markets. We'll have the Southeast Building Science Symposium in Chattanooga, Tennessee. So we're excited to offer both of those. And you can get more details about registering and all about the speakers and sponsors and everything you need to know at bsandbeerkc.org.
And I think the added appeal of having the multiple places is the curriculum can be tailored to the region better than you can if you're having one show. Am I right?
That's true. The climate zone specific discussions are certainly going to be a huge part of the roundtable sessions. And our presenters are all really sharp folks that are going to be able to adjust those questions and answers on the fly. You know, you get Steve Basic, Jake Bruton. These guys are staples. They've been at all of our events, but we've also added this year Allison Bales. We have Ben Bogey back again. You know, those guys are so sharp. They're quickly on it. We also have Glenn Mathewson, Mariana Pickering, and Emily Mottram for code, passive, and pretty good house discussions. And those will all be tailored to a certain extent to the climate zone and the market that they're being presented in. So yeah, that's a huge advantage. It's also I'm planning to go to all of them because I think the venue dictates a certain vibe. The Kansas City venue is the brewery, and it's very much like a regular BS and beer get together in that it's somewhat informal. There's beer flowing and good food, but you're there for the day and then you're gone. The Chattanooga event is a lot more like your Fine Homebuilding Summit in 2019, where pretty much everyone stays on site. We bought out the hotel, so everyone in the place is going to be building science nerds having building science conversations,
Oh
playing
my
ping
God,
pong
that is
at
going to be
2 in the
so
morning.
fun. It's like summer
Yeah.
camp for building science nerds.
That was the goal. So yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I'm really excited about both of those events. And then we have Austin and DC, which will be the Texas Building Science Symposium, which I think is looking like it's going to take shape for November. We're finalizing the venue there. And then the DC area, we're really excited about partnering with Nick Berger and Dan Hines of DC BS and Beer. They've been working really hard to lock down the venue there, and we don't quite have that ready to announce, but it's coming. It's part of the group.
That's exciting. We'll talk more about that in the Fine Homebuilding podcast after show. Get into the nitty gritty of some of the presentations, I hope.
Can
you
so
tell folks what you're working on, Travis? I think it's really valuable to have a real builder on the show, in addition to Ian. And I'm sure they're curious about what you're doing.
I wondered if Ian was going to take that as a shot.
No, I didn't mean it that way at all.
I know.
I'll get him back
I'm just starting to start trouble. No, I'm glad to be on. And yes, we are very busy with building. I know it seems like all we do is Instagram videos of the Fine Homebuilding house, but we do actually build the Fine Homebuilding house in between Instagram takes. Basically, we have 7 open projects going right now, 4 renovations and 3 new home builds.
How do you find enough people to do all that?
Well, that is a problem. It's funny you mentioned that, Patrick. We've actually grown our team. We just added 2 new members. We've had 2 summer interns. One was actually an extern, a high school teacher that we partner with, who does a building trades program very similar to what Matt Bloomquist in Taylorville does. This is Scott Hughes here in Kansas City, at the Turner High School building trades program. He spent 30 days with us, externing this summer to try and get better at his job. It's like an intern, but I'm not paying him. The high school paid his salary to work and train with Joe and I.
That seems like a great distinction for you.
Yeah, it was a huge win. Well, a lot of it's about liability for us. That was one of the biggest concerns we had with interns is, we're not really set up to cover untrained people on our sites. It's a real risk for everyone involved, and we want to keep people safe. But the coverage that Scott's school provided to him, and also, of course, paying his salary, because he's worth a lot more than your typical summer intern. He's a skilled person.
Yeah. So
he was a real asset, and he helped us get a lot of things resolved this summer. We also had Audrey Bonham with us. In fact, she's doing her last week with us now. The daughter of one of our structural engineers. She's been interning with us this summer, and she's been great help too. So we've had some good help through the Keep Craft Alive efforts that we've made in the area. And then we've also hired, we just hired Brent Crawford, great guy, and he's working out wonderfully. He's hanging cabinets for me right now.
The young woman you mentioned, can you repeat her name for me, please?
Audrey Bonham.
Audrey, is she planning a career in the trades, or is she just looking for a summer job?
No. She's actually 1 year away from finishing her degree at Kansas State University in anthropology, I believe. And not sure that there's a career there waiting for her that she wants, and was really hoping to do something more hands-on. So, not to air her laundry, but I think she might have been interested in just moving on to her career now and not necessarily moving to that senior year. And I think her dad, who's one of the partners at the structural engineering firm we use, was like, why don't you try it for the summer and see how it goes, and then finish go ahead and knock out that degree before you make that big decision. That's not for me to say, but that's what I suspect is going on.
Do you think Audrey loves it?
She does love it.
Yeah.
She's got that first year fun mentality, like, oh, there's demo, get out of the way. I want that. So she's been doing some of the hardest work and then some of the most routine work too, that she seems to really find the joy in. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with sort of that groove that you get in, even when you're doing a repetitive task. Like we had her doing some built up framing for an over roof that we're doing on the FHB house, actually, to make the roof venting work on that. Because of the poor availability of lumber and the high price, we needed a 2x2 furring strip to make our over roof work. And we could only get them in 8-foot pieces at $5 a piece. We were able to get some 10-footers, I think, at like $12 a piece or something egregious. So we found a source for some Belco trim cutoffs, which is like a 1x, like a primed fascia product. But these were rips from some other manufacturing process. And so we had her take 2 of those 1.5-inch strips at 3/4 thick and staple them together for basically a day so that we would have 16-foot long straight furring. And
So
Audrey
Travis,
found
can I
fun
say
in
we
that.
want people to join the trades. We don't want to get them to quit, right? It's like that's going about the wrong way.
I planned to relieve her halfway through it. Just wanted her to get a taste of like, hey, this is one of the things that we do. And she was like, I'm really in the group. Can I stay late today? And she did. She stuck it out an extra 2 hours. She's like, I'm loving this. Because there is something very satisfying in making something and moving it from this side of the stack to this side. Making cabinet parts, it's the same thing. You know, you're making rails and stiles and you're pocket holing them or whatever. You're sanding. All those things have a real satisfaction to them when you see the pile of wood that's now ready for the job.
Yeah, I get that, and I think that's fantastic. I hope she does what she wants and isn't pressured to choose a career path based on expectations or pressure from outside.
She's a very bright young lady. She'll do well whatever she chooses to do, but right now she seems very interested in keeping her hands on work, and so she'll have opportunities for sure.
Cool. Ian, what have you been up to?
First, I want to say, Travis, it's great that you're doing the Austin one in November, because I can't make the first 2, but I was really hoping that you would pick like a cold time period up here in the Midwest to do the Austin one. So
I'm sure that was by accident, right?
Yeah, I haven't been there in like 20 years, so that's the one I'm eyeing up. Otherwise, we did a lot of just continuing work around the house, laid out for the shed that we want to build. I found out that my setback from the road was about double the amount of footage I thought it was. Actually, it turned out to be 65 feet instead of 30 when I dug through the zoning, so that threw the whole shed design into flux. And I was out there and laying out my yard and getting some spray painted setback lines out, and Dad and I went and kind of figured out the optimum size for both of our needs of it. So that was a lot of fun. And then while I had the yard spray paint out, Sarah and I laid out some raised beds in the backyard for us to do kind of a more formal garden out behind our house where our screen porch overlooks to.
So perennials, Ian,
weekend.
or vegetables?
She's thinking she's going to do vegetables down there, and then just focus the main garden on annual plants and some of her flowers that she grows.
Nice. So last I recall, your shed project was on hold, so it seems like it's back on again.
It's back on because material has gone down. I don't know if we'll get it done early enough this year to get the solar array put on it, since I think they told me they stopped working in about November. But I think we'd like to, probably because of the cold, yeah. But I want to see if we can at least get the material purchased for it while the prices are down a little bit. So I have my doubts that they're going to stay there.
Do you have a place to store that stuff?
Sure. We got all kinds of room. We're on the corner of 120 acres. I think we can find a spot.
I forget what that's like, right? Because, with your 1 acre of suburbia, you can't have too much stuff lying around or you get a reputation amongst the neighbors.
No, especially if you live in Greenwich like you do. You can't just have piles of stuff hanging around outside your house.
I got to say, I love the Greenwich shots.
Loaded,
so good.
It's Monday morning.
You guys are so ready with that.
But we'll get there.
Jeff, do you have anything to report?
Not really. I mowed the weeds this weekend, but mostly worked on work.
I'm going to keep you all in suspense, but I did Brian Pontalillo's blower door test, his post rough-in test before the drywall crew comes today. And I'm not going to talk about it because I want everyone to tune into the after show. It was very interesting. Well, as always, we heard from our great listeners. And once again, we heard on the subject of the greater buoyancy of humid or moisture-laden air, vapor with water vapor.
I cannot believe the amount of correspondence you're getting about my glib comment from trying to quote Tiger Woods about hitting a golf ball in humid weather.
It's great, right? Travis, you're familiar with this building science phenomena, right?
I am.
Yeah.
Yeah, we take full advantage of it
How so?
when we can. Well, just knowing how things are going to behave allows you to plan accordingly. Like I had a real nightmare conversation with Ben Bogey about a year ago about the strategy for an insulated over roof. And he's like, yeah, you're going to rot out your sheathing. You got to worry about all that moist air that's going to go up there. I'm like, what?
He's always a sunny optimist.
You can always count on Ben for a smile. No, there's, I guess, taking advantage of it makes it sound like I'm making, cold fusion and creating energy.
No, but your point is that
buoyancy,
you take it into account, right?
That's what I should have said. Yes, we utilize an understanding of that to not cause building failures.
I thought you had some secret to, low energy costs or what have you. Like, they used to have the ads in the back of Popular Mechanics, like, increase your fuel economy to 80 miles per gallon with this magnet you put on the fuel line. The federal government doesn't want you to know about it.
That
I don't have any of those secrets.
This last Christmas, Patrick, was one of those Popular Mechanic plug this chip into your car things from my father-in-law. I was like, man, I'm not going anywhere near that.
It's actually just it summons the EPA that you've adjusted your fuel air ratio. Oh my God, let's get back to this. Okay, dear Patrick and podcast crew, I was just listening to podcast 479 and my jaw dropped during Stephen's discussion. I must report a seriously erroneous statement. Contrary to what was said, moisture air is absolutely less dense than drier air. Just try an internet search for air density calculator relative humidity, for example. I don't think I've ever used all those words together in a sentence. Anyway, to restate the internet reference more quantitatively, if that is helpful, the reason is simple. For normal pressures, the numbers of molecules in a volume of gas at a given pressure and temperature is fixed. From chemistry class, Avogadro's number of molecules, 1 mole, that is 22.4 liters of STP and pressure. Molecular number is the weight in grams of 1 mole of molecules. Do you guys remember the HVAC textbook that someone sent us an excerpt from? This might be as complicated as that. Water molecules have a molecular weight of about 18. Air is mostly nitrogen, N2 is 28, with mostly some oxygen, O2, which is 32, for an equivalent dry air molecular weight of 29. So 28 versus 29 moles, right? Is that what we're talking about? Is that our measurement? I think it is. Adding water at a relative mass of 18 grams per mole displaces an equal number of air molecules at approximately 29 grams a mole. The psychometric chart shows that chart that was noted shows the weight of water increasing, but what is missing is that air is being displaced with the addition of water, since the total number of molecules must remain constant. Since the water molecules are lighter, the net effect is a density reduction. Dan says, yes, I'm a retired engineer. I couldn't have guessed.
Didn't see that coming.
Yes, I'm a retired engineer who worked in aerospace, but with no direct home construction experience. I did get a mechanical engineering master's specializing in diffusion processes, momentum, heat, and mass transfer, vapor transfer, radiation, convection, and conduction. And I probably would have gone into the building industries if those options had really existed in the 70s. I think he said is meaning like building science, if I had to guess, right?
Yeah, I think that was how I took it as well.
He says, I'm in the process of trying to lessen our electric bills. The solar was installed in 2021. There are some double pane windows installed this spring. The house is a 1965 brick veneer with an attic space and shallow hipped roof. I had a blower door test performed and it was 13.4 air changes per hour at 50 pascals. I know there is some insulation on the attic floor and over the ducts, but obviously there are a lot of leaks. I would like to attack the air leakage problem, but it is not clear who to talk to for a systems solution, as there doesn't seem to be an energy audit function in Arizona. I will try again when we get below 90 degrees. Thanks for the podcast. I need all the air sealing help I can get. Dan in Arizona. Dan, thank you very much for the email. I think I understood what you wrote, mostly.
I think you've got to get him in contact with Kevin Ireton so that Kevin can go out there when he's wintering in Arizona and help this guy out.
And climb around in his shallow hip roof attic. Yeah, that sounds awesome.
I want to say that purveyor of seriously erroneous statements would be a great business card tagline. I wrote that one down. I'm going to remember that. That's going to come in handy later.
I love hearing from our listeners. Thank you, folks, all of you who write in. It's really the best show, or the best part of the show, easily. Hi, podcast gurus. I enjoyed your recent conversation on options for more moisture sealing a basement with wet concrete floors, and wanted to throw out another option: micro cement floor finish and sealer. With this option, the floor needs to be cleaned, but no primer or complicated prep work is required. The floor needs to be wetted down before application, so an already wet floor isn't a problem. Any damage to the concrete can be repaired first, and heavy things can be rolled on the finished floor. I think the cost is under $1 a square foot for material, and it will be beautiful, finished, and useful. There are 3 components needed, and he puts links to the micro cement, colorant, and clear sealer in his email. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts. Thanks, Ron. Any of you have any familiarity with this stuff?
I have a little bit of familiarity with topping compounds from commercial work, and I did watch a few of their videos specifically about the product that he mentions in his letter. It seems like it's all the acrylic sealer that's doing the stopping of the rising damp. The topping compound itself is just a cement high bond product that you can add color into. They even bill it as a great product for adding a decorative concrete finish to existing concrete.
It's Portland cement based, Ian?
It says cement-based. It did not specifically say Portland cement when I looked through all their spec sheets, but you would assume that's what they mean by cement-based. Have you ever used any of this stuff, Travis?
I researched this stuff at length a couple years ago, of course, as a solution to a problem. And we ended up tearing out and
vapor
replacing.
transmission, Travis, or something else?
Basically an aesthetic failure. Slab failure in a basement. We live in a basement market, and basement finishes are common. And we had some folks that wanted a very modern looking basement. And they're like, oh, we can just polish the concrete. And I'm like, well, it's cracked here. It's cracked here. We've got a moisture issue here. We really need to, if you want that look, do something different. And so I did a lot of research back then. And we ended up on that specific project, not using it at all. And then for another one we were looking at it at, we ended up basically doing the old school fine home building approach. I don't know how many years ago this was. I'm guessing it was maybe 2008 to 2012 era, but the double layer of subfloor over foam to insulate and
I think that's Andy Engel's article and technique. Am I right? Yeah,
I think you're right.
That's a standby piece.
Time tested. We've done it a number of times. And I'm podcasting to you from my own basement where I did that, and it has held up very well. But we weren't able to use the concrete product on that job. It wasn't going to be cost effective for us. We ended up tearing out the other slab that we needed it for. So I have no actual experience, just a lot of internet research, which I think in this day and age makes you an expert, right?
Sure.
I should tell everyone what to do.
Does.
I agree with your assessment, Ian. I think that they're really relying on the chemistry of the acrylic to resolve the damp, and the concrete is the topping compound is essentially the aesthetic that allows that to be a nice finish in your acrylic. We've done a lot of epoxy coatings to deal with moisture, but it does have to have an initial dry in order to utilize those. So I understand what they're after here.
Have you had successful adhesion with epoxy coatings, Travis? Because that's one of the concerns I've heard is they will pop off if there's enough vapor pressure.
I don't know how severely we have challenged them, but yes, we have done a number of epoxy coated basement finishes. That was kind of the hot thing for a while. It's much more common in a garage for us here, for a more I guess you'd say, commercial looking application. Usually when people want the sort of the modeled look of a beautiful concrete patina, they're not going to approve the kind of singular color and monolithic appearance of an epoxy coating.
Yeah, it looks totally different, right? They want something with
something with some life.
Life. Who doesn't? Oh boy. So, do you guys remember Tess? Tess wrote in a while back about getting estimates for her bathroom remodel, and it generated a lot of conversation. Tess wrote in last week, and it's a long email, but I think it's really good, so I'm going to read it. I hope you all will bear with me. Hey, FHB podcast. I couldn't have been more amused by the variety of cast and community responses given to my email in episode 430 about our bathroom remodel. While I haven't convinced my husband that we can do the bathroom remodel ourselves, we did agree that a backyard fence project was within our capabilities, because somehow that sounded easier. 220 feet and 33 42-inch deep post holes later, I have a lot of opinions about concrete. To back up, let's start here. Here's how we got started. The goal was a modern-looking fence that needed a minimum maintenance. After seeing a friend's 8-foot fence post twist within the first month of being installed, we knew we wanted a higher quality product that would look great and straight years later. Luckily, my neighbor mentioned slip fence as an option. We knew immediately this would meet our aesthetic needs. The posts are aluminum with channels that fit standard 6-foot deck boards in either horizontal or vertical orientation. We chose the horizontal to fit with the modern look we were adapting the house to. Next came the moment where one decision tripled the amount of work the fence would take. Instead of taking the easy way and staining the 6-foot deck boards black, we decided to do our fence in the traditional Japanese style of yakisugi. I know I'm not saying that right. Do you guys have a suggestion on how I should be pronouncing that?
Nope.
Yakisugi, I think, is how you say it, sometimes referred to as sho shugiban. The main benefit of this traditional technique is it gives the wood incredible resistance to the elements and durability. Claims of yakisugi producers say the wood should last 50 to 100 years with regular oiling every 10. At the time, we couldn't find anyone who produced yakisugi in the board size we needed. This meant I now had an excuse to buy a flamethrower. Here's how we did the yakisugi. We bought the 500 6-foot untreated cedar deck boards and in batches of 60 set them up vertically on a homemade stand in our driveway. Our best results were stacking the boards 3 deep and 20 wide. This minimized the amount of setup time and helped limit the number of boards knocked off the stand by wind. For anyone attempting this at home, I'd recommend the Ideal Gas single-head heating torch, as the enclosed nozzle keeps the electrical starter from melting 100 boards in.
It's a useful tip.
The wood goes through a process of 1, first char on both sides, 2, brush both sides with water, an acrylic bristle broom to remove the first layer of loose char, then 3, second char on both sides, followed by 2 coats of alkyd oil per side. What baffles me is that for the past 5 months, the attendants at the gas station never questioned how we could go through 2 15-pound propane tanks every 2 hours on the weekends. For any yakisugi purists listening to the podcast, yes, we are aware that we didn't do the traditional flue method. Did you guys happen to look at this video?
We did, or I did, yeah.
Ian, do you want to describe what the traditional flue method looks like?
Isn't it like the way that they do barrels for whiskey, where they have the flame going up inside of it, but instead you have this, it's a flue that you put the board in, and you have the flame going up the flue to char the board.
Yeah. And you're handling these on-fire boards repeatedly, and the example she linked to in her email, like, these things look like they were 12 or 16 feet tall. It didn't look easy at all. They're on fire. And this guy had roped some volunteers in to help him with this project. And he's like, all right, guys, we got to get going. And these folks are, they seemed less than excited about grabbing flaming lumber.
I think Tess did the right thing with the flamethrower.
Yeah.
That's a great tool to have an excuse to buy. I need to come up with an excuse to buy a flamethrower.
And those of you listening will love seeing, I think it's her husband, Josh, using this tool out in the driveway. It is a fantastic photo. Living in the suburbs of Minneapolis, that seemed like too good a reason for someone to call the fire department on us. Even so, I was nervous and kept checking next door to see if anyone wrote about the crazy millennials down the street with a flamethrower. But what we found in this project actually had a very positive reaction from our neighbors. It gave them an excuse to stop by on their walks, ask questions, and cheer us on, which was much needed as we transitioned into the digging phase of the project. Knowing your audience, I'm going to make the assumption that most of know the process of installing a fence. If not, they should check your article series on the topic, as it was very helpful for us. For this message, I'll just bring up a few of the nuances specific to our project. The best decision we made on this whole project was to rent a Toro Dingo auger. In one weekend, we were able to dig all 33 holes, place sonotubes in them, and cap them with plastic plates. The sonotubes and the plates kept water out so the holes didn't collapse. This way we could do concrete and post for 3 or 4 holes a night after work, which was our only option as non-professional builders. As we live in Minnesota, in order to prevent heaving, we needed to go 42 inches deep for the post holes. The only catch was the Dingo could only dig 36, which meant I had to follow the rig with a manual post hole digger to remove the last 6 inches of dirt. We followed this with a base layer of gravel, and then we chose to float the hollow posts in the concrete by pre-installing the vertical wood channels and using those to level the fence post by post. I'm not sure this was the best method, but it did prevent us from having to cut in even post heights later on. We ran into some issues with the consistency of the concrete, as following the quick-crete instructions ended up with too dry a consistency. The method we landed on that worked best was fill the hole halfway up with concrete, float the post, and then fill the rest of the hole with concrete. This made sure we could still adjust the post side to side, since we were very dependent on making sure each post was exactly 6 feet apart and that the post would go as low as we needed to fill into the concrete. I still have nightmares about the 2 holes I had to dig concrete out of by hand because the post wouldn't go deep enough. So I'm guessing like they started to fill the hole and realized that the hole was not yet deep enough. That sounds awful. You'll notice in the photos that we were using a pitcher to scoop the mixture into the holes because of our floating method. We often didn't have more than a 3x3 inch opening to put the concrete through. By the end of the project, I needed a whole new set of kitchen utensils, as my measuring cups, bowls, and had all been needed to get us out of a pinch. Tongs, I think. Measuring cups, bowls, and tongs. Today, we're at the point where all the sections are filled, and we're going to go back and adjust the stack to be flush, and removing the boards that are too bowed or crooked. After that, we'll install the cap rail, solar-powered lights, and lastly, the gate. 2 human gates, and then a 9-foot utility gate. Why do I have the sneaking suspicion the gates are going to be the hardest part of this job? Anyways, always happy to be the free entertainment for this crew. Maybe the bathroom remodel will look like a breeze after we finish the fence. Pictures include my husband Josh, my dad Scott, and my 80-pound fluff ball Sisu. Hope I said that right. What do you guys think? This is quite an undertaking, eh?
The brutality of this is unbearable to me. Like, anyone who's run a postal digger knows that the best part is that first foot or two where you have good leverage and you can really move fast. Having to chase the Toro auger for that last 6 inches, 8 inches, whatever it was, it's awful. It's my shoulders hurt just thinking about it, because you're bent all the way down, because the postal digger arms aren't any longer. You're dealing with it's the worst.
It's the worst. I thought they made like extensions for hydraulically driven augers. Do you think that would just be too time wasting to have to put that section in to only dig 6 inches? I mean, it would seem like it would be easier on your back.
I think it's equipment specific. I think the Dingo specifically only handles the torque of up to that 36-inch auger, and to get the longer auger, I believe you'd have to upgrade to like a Bobcat or a case piece of more substantial machinery, which I know you're all in on, Patrick.
I think that's
but sometimes the site
idea.
Doesn't allow.
Right. Yeah.
You would just buy one, right?
And then keep it and volunteer it for neighbor projects, right? What do you think about this, Ian?
I think that bathroom project is going to be a breeze after this. There are few projects I have disliked more than installing fences. For a lot of the reasons that Travis was just talking about with the post hole diggers. And the last fence that we did at our house in New York, I actually paid a landscaper to just come and put all the posts in for me. And then I just hung the fence. And even that was more than I really wanted to be doing fence building wise. But that's a lot of linear feet of fence that they put up.
It is immense. It is huge, right? Yeah. What do you think, Jeff?
It does look like it's going to be beautiful, though.
It's beautiful.
And the Shishugibon, that is an amazing finish that is going to really set their property apart. I mean, judging from the photos, I bet they're the only fence of that type in their area. It's really a beautiful look and incredibly durable. I love the natural nature of it, where you're not applying a ridiculous volume of chemical to your outdoor spaces every couple of years. It's not a high maintenance thing. I really love that process, and it kind of reminds me of high school ceramics. If you guys did any raku, where you get your piece glazed and then you throw it in a trash can full of newspaper, and the heat shock quickly shrinks the skin on the glaze, and then the smoke from the newspaper infiltrates the glaze, and you have that same alligator skin look of cracking structure. That's, to me, what is the unsung hero of Shishugibon. It's not just the darkness, and it's not just the char. It's the crack structure of that char that really is what I think is aesthetically breathtaking.
I'm left speechless by Travis's very eloquent description of the surface. It is. It's really cool looking, yeah. Jeff, what do you think?
Yeah, it's the Shishugibon is something I've always wanted to try and never have. And I mean, as far as post holes, that's just like the stuff of nightmares. But
I love how a big DIY project can involve your neighbors. They really can be hugely interested, and I always enjoyed showing them around my projects and making friends that way. It's easier for me to talk about construction than any other subject, so it's a good way to meet the folks in your neighborhood.
To that end, Patrick, it's also a really good way to do what you talk about all the time with keeping craft alive. Like, the neighbor kid will come over and want to run the equipment, and you got to let him run it. You got to let him run it, even if he tears up the yard a little bit, because that starts that fire, or at least sets a spark to that interest in the trades. So it's an important thing to do in your neighborhood, to show your neighbors, and especially their young ones.
I was hoping somebody would stop by Brian's place as we were doing the blower door test, so I could give them the elevator speech on what we were doing, because I think the more normal folks, average folks who understand the importance of airtightness would go a long way to having them make cost-effective improvements versus the vinyl replacement windows and other things that they think really help the airtightness or the comfort of their home. It could hopefully dispel some of those misconceptions. Wow. For those of you following along, we only now getting to our first question, but we'll try and pick up the pace here. This comes from Ryan. This may be a little too niche, but here goes. I'd like to install some aromatic cedar in a closet we have in our house. Currently, the walls are covered in plaster and lath. It's in pretty good shape, and there's fiberglass insulation on the outside of the wall. The attic crawl space is with an uninsulated roof. The space where the closet is a conditioned space. Should something be installed between the cedar and the plaster? The house is far from airtight, so I'm not worried about an air barrier, but I was thinking perhaps 15-pound felt. Thanks in advance, Ryan. Who wants to go?
So, did you say that it's rough plaster or pretty good plaster? Is that
pretty good plaster?
So, typically,
oh no, it's in rough shape.
It's in rough shape, right?
My bad.
So I think it depends on how rough a shape it is in. So if you think about just cedar or any wood trim going over drywall, you typically would just have one coat of taping on your drywall, and then you could put up your nickel gap planking or your cedar board and you would be fine. If the plaster's in really bad shape, I would think it's almost more important for him to knock the loose stuff off so that it's not complicating his install. And from there, I don't think putting the 15-pound felt up does any harm. So if it's something that he's concerned about, you can just go ahead and do it as opposed to repairing the plaster.
Travis?
Well, I certainly agree with Ian, but I can't let go of the building science. I can't not air seal something if I have a chance to air seal it. And if I'm connected to the attic air, my God, man, of course I'm going to stop that attic air from flowing through my aromatic cedar. I guess it would add to the aromatic nature of the cedar to blast hot air from my attic through it. But I feel like it would just be too easy to resolve that the proper way.
With thermoply,
guess,
right? Even we could do it with that shiny cardboard stuff and tape it. You just need an air barrier. Am I right?
I would want that for my comfort. If I was addressing this myself, I would either patch the plaster, which doesn't let a lot of air through, and then just address the baseboard connection, which I'm sure is a high velocity mover, or go ahead and put up even a 1/4 inch sheet of something that you can tape easily. Just can't let it go. My mind doesn't let me off the hook on that air leakage stuff.
Yeah, I mean, if your plaster's in bad shape, you need some kind of other air barrier, or the warm moist air is going to condense on the first condensing surface, which is going to be your sheathing, or somewhere in that wall assembly, and that's not good.
And I guess that would be a good thing to point out, Patrick. Like, let's say that you resolve the elevation or depth, rather, of your furring, that, like Ian was saying, in order to make your install easy. And then you said, oh, I'll just put up some plastic. That might be a really, really bad idea there because of what you just described and the potential for vapor risk there. So maybe this is a great opportunity for a vapor open 15-pound felt, like you said, where you just stop a little bit of that breeze. Maybe I pull back the reins on that building science every now and again.
So I have used a 30-pound felt under hardwood flooring installs a couple times, and it works fine for that. Some people have expressed concern that the asphalt smell is either bad for you or just something you don't want to have in your house because it stinks, right? It's not a pleasant smell. Anyone who's been behind a paving truck knows the horrible odor I'm talking about. So I maybe in the New England area, we call it rosin paper. Do you guys have something similar, which is just the paper without the asphalt component?
Same product.
Yeah. So wouldn't that work in this application too, and be very vapor open?
Yeah, I would think so. I don't know what the perm rating is on red rosin, but I have to assume it's definitely going to allow for drying. And it would still stop that draft.
The air movement, right?
Yeah.
I think a self-adhered WRB placed in here at $2 a square foot is really the way you want to go.
This is a great place for some Intello or some Sega Myrex. I think that's really the only proper way to build a cedar closet these days, isn't it?
With some, European air sealing tape, and man, you're off to the races. You've got a new hobby. You can do all the other closets in the house too.
To Ian's point, I do think I would chip off all the plaster though,
to make it easier to put up the
paneling.
paneling.
You would have so much easier. Yeah. And as small as a closet typically is, I would think you're looking at a dirty afternoon. I wouldn't do it in the summer because you're connected to the attic, but otherwise, not that big a deal.
And
I would think anything loose you would want to get rid of. Otherwise, as you nail up your cedar boards, you're just going to disrupt it, and it's going to crumble and fall onto your finished material.
And it's going to prevent it from sitting tight, Yeah. And that stuff, in my experience, is very thin and fragile. Like, it needs a good substrate. It's not meant to be,
right.
Spanning framing cavities at all. Well, Ryan, I'm sure that wasn't helpful at all. This comes from Hans. Hey, Fine Homebuilding crew. I'm finally writing to say thank you for addressing my question in episode 253 on how to insulate my interior roof when using exterior insulation. Hans is building a conditioning a post-frame building, right? Wasn't that what was going on? Yep. I haven't gotten to attempt any solutions that were discussed as life, a new role at work, and a new project. But I do like Ian's practical and effective suggestion on using craft-based bats if I can suppress my desire to overcomplicate the simple things. It was also very cool to hear the shared interest from the podcast crew in my small home project, as I think most of my friends and family are sick of hearing about all the building science stuff. So let me know when the podcast hits the road to tour the many builds of fellow listeners in the Wisconsin area so I can make sure to be stocked up on some of the local craft beers for when you visit my continual work site. Yeah, okay. As I mentioned, I haven't gotten to finishing my own home as I've been working on building a simple 26 by 32 detached workshop with my dad on his property. He says it's going to have exterior insulation and strapping and cathedral ceiling. This will serve as my future cabinet shop for finishing my house, so it does have a good return on investment for putting off my own projects. See the attached photos of this build. This is all pretty much just a two-man crew working after work and on weekends. The bought and borrowed equipment shown in the photo has made a huge difference in getting this far. Did you guys see the amazing stuff he's been using to build this?
Yeah, he's got a great
The
setup.
forklift is a nice ad.
And not just like a little forklift. This is like a legitimate machine, right? Yeah.
Yep. And the scissor lift too for doing the exterior strapping. Like, this is a commercial site equipment dream. It's perfect for what he's trying to accomplish.
So the scissor lift to do the siding, okay? Does it look like to you they built a temporary deck to drive this thing on? Am I seeing that correct?
Yeah, I think so.
That's what it looks like to me. I-joist cutoffs, 2x6, and probably several layers of sheathing. Or maybe there's 2x dimensional lumber underneath that plywood for rolling stock, because that would probably be a lot.
That looks like
stronger
a
over
day
those
or
spans.
2 days work alone. Am I right? Just to build the platform for the scissor lift.
For sure.
If I think that, it probably takes like 2 weeks. That's how I roll.
We do those complex calculations. I'm sure you're familiar with this, Ian, where you decide how long it's basically the same thing that people do when they decide whether they're going to build a jig or not. You know, it's like, oh, okay, well, if we build this jig, we'll be 20% faster and the time it'll take to build the jig. This is the same calculation. Like, all right, it would take us moving the ladder 22 times. Each time we move the ladder, it's a new setup. We got to re-roll out hoses. We're only going to get this far each day. That's how you end up with a runway built next to your site in order to run equipment and make siting easier.
He says, enough rambling. My question is, what would be the best way to heat and cool this space in climate zone 6 throughout the year, considering it will be a dedicated hobby wood shop with maybe a bit of welding? I was pushing for a single head hyperheat mini split with some sort of supplemental heat for the really cold days. But my dad, getting in touch with some local HVAC contractors, has slowly been steering away from that idea. The contractors have said they don't like mini splits in general, or that the dust in the shop could be detrimental to the mini split and make it fail early. So he is leaning more toward a traditional furnace and AC at this point. The downside of this is losing the floor space in the not so large shop. The goal for the climate control will be to keep it workable year-round, so between 50 and 70 degrees. I couldn't find much saying anything that mini splits are super problematic in a wood shop, but I am interested to hear your input. Any other tips on air infiltration, or if you think an air exchange is useful, necessary, would be welcome as well, as this will hopefully be as airtight of a garage as you can get with 2 garage doors on it. Sorry for the essay, and thanks in advance for any tips or ideas. Hans, thanks for the email. It was great. So is it a problem to have mini splits in a wood shop, anybody?
Well, he's not wrong about the dust being more detrimental. Like, mini splits do require a closer level of maintenance because you're dealing with a smaller coil, a smaller surface. It's really, really important to be on it with your maintenance and filter changes. And so with the amount of sawdust, unless he has a very dedicated dust collection at point of use, he's going to want to do some extra protection for that unit, because it's an imperfect system. Things get around the filters in even the best units. So I would say there's a good reason to have this concern, and he can solve it either way, either with the furnace, which you're still going to get dust past the filter and get on the coil, so you still need to be paying attention to it, albeit probably it's easier to clean a coil in a traditional furnace.
And they're probably more forgiving.
And I guess I keep saying coil, so I'm thinking AC, but
well, it's that's going to be a concern because it's going to be used year round, right? And you need to
dehumidification.
You're going to potentially get sawdust in your ductwork. You're going to have to potentially do more frequent filter changes in the heating season and the cooling season.
I think he needs a really good air cleaner for his shop, no matter what. That's such an important part of any shop that I've ever worked in. I'm sure, Travis, the ones you've set up and worked in, you have some kind of air cleaner going on for the finer particles. And then I would add, if he wants to do the mini split, do something to cover it up when it's not in use. He's going to have some pretty good portions of the year where he probably won't be running it. So by covering it after he's done working and running that air cleaner, I think could minimize the amount of dust getting into the coils of the mini split. But he will have to do extra maintenance and be more diligent in cleaning it than you would for a mini split in your house.
I think the air cleaner is a great suggestion. I think you're going to need effective dust collection, and that's good for your health, and it makes it a much nicer place to spend time doing woodworking if you don't have a mess everywhere that you're creating all the time. And, if you're making a relatively airtight building that you want to keep conditioned, you're going to have to put your dust collector, outside the space, or at least get its air. And I don't know how I'm sure you can duct them, but I don't know how you duct the intake air. Do you guys have any familiarity with that?
I have not built a shop like this before, but I would advise this person to go to his local cabinet shop and ask for a tour and take copious notes, because that's essentially what he's trying to accomplish. And I've seen on all the cabinet shops we've used over the years, they do have their dust collection external, and I think it's for insurance risk because it's a massive fire hazard. If you do have something take off in that system, you don't want it inside of the building where where that explosion is catastrophic. You want it to be outside where it can be managed a little safer. I don't think he's going to run that kind of volume that he's going to have to worry about explosion risk to that degree. But I do think it is worth taking the time to visit some places where they've already got this really well figured out. Because I don't have this figured out. I do know if he puts the mini split in, that I would definitely go get. They make I'll send you a picture, Patrick. We use them to protect our mini splits on sites during these shoulder seasons where we have to run. Yeah. Well, and even on new home, like we're doing a house right now where we have hardwoods and trim going in, but it's summer in Kansas City. Everything's humid and crazy hot, and I don't want my paint job to be ruined before it's even applied. I need the wood to be stable. So we're running the finished HVAC during build, and we're using these reusable MERV 11 filters that you can get at your box store. They're designed to be washable and reusable, and they come with a plastic frame that you can modify to fit your system. And so we've just basically built an external filter, a pre-filter for the mini split. And that would be a really easy solution for this because it's point of use. You can see it, so you can watch it get dirty and be reminded that you damn sure better clean it, or you're going to ruin your system. So that would be nothing to do with his dust collection, but certainly a great way to protect his mini split.
I just have one concern with that. Are you putting an additional stress on the blower? Because that you are, right? I mean, yeah. So
yes, especially at MERV 11. You anytime you increase filter media, you increase load on the fan, and that's a definite concern. But at some point, you do have to pick your poison. Like you want to be comfortable, and you're going to have. I think the fan's probably cheaper than the coil. Is the way that I would pick my poison that way. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's good stuff. This is a good one here. Hello, podcast. My name is Joey, and I'm a builder in the Colorado mountains. This just where you were, Travis?
Yeah.
I've consistently run into conflicts. No punches. Violence is never the answer, he says. When it comes to I've consistently run into conflicts when it comes to construction terms, from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, even a small distance from Breckenridge to Gunnison. Industry pros use wildly different terms, meaning the same thing. Why is it that there seems to be 3 or 4 different terms for essentially the same item? Is this regional or just confusion? Joseph, Gunnison County, Colorado. Oh boy, I love this question.
I like it too, and I like it especially because this is a frustration for me as well. Reading FHB for so many years, and so much of historically the writing coming out of the Northeast.
Well, isn't that the right place for it to be coming from?
Well, here in the mighty Midwest, we have a couple of phrases that I think correct the errors of some of our predecessors. And I'm not going to pick a fight here, but I will say that in Gunnison, which, by the way, big up to Western State College of Colorado, where I almost attended there in Gunnison, that is an area that it's kind of like Dallas. Like, no one who lives in Dallas is from Dallas. It's a huge draw from everywhere else. That's great ski country, and I don't ski, but those who do move to that area, and they're from everywhere else. So you get that melting pot of terminology where some people are talking about the water table as this piece of trim along the base of the house, and the geotech next door is like, no, the water table is literally the level of water in the earth. That's not a piece of trim. Don't confuse the two. They're very different things. So I think that's what he's dealing with. And I don't think it's intentional. I think it's just a function of when you live somewhere cool, a lot of people want to move there. And then when they do, they bring the words that they use.
I had the same thought, Travis, and I would add that I think it goes back to who you learned from and who they learned from. There's all the different European areas where people immigrated to the U.S. from all have different terms for different building materials. I've worked with a lot of people from the British Isles, and even amongst the different areas in the UK, they have different terms for things. And my friend Mike Muldy worked in France for a long time, so when I worked with him at HVP, he brought a lot of French carpentry terms to the job site. So I think it even goes back further, but I agree that when you're dealing with an area like this part of Colorado, that nobody is from there. Everybody came from somewhere else because it's a great place to live. You're just going to accentuate that melting pot of different terminology.
I can't let this go without asking you guys if you've ever heard exterior sheathing called boxing, because that's my framer on all of our projects who is from this area. Like, we grew up in the same area. The guy that he learned from, to your point, Ian, called exterior sheathing boxing. And so every time we get to the point that I'm ready for my sheathing inspection, I'm calling it in. And the guy's like, whoa, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I got to get the sheathing inspection called our nail pattern. He's like, oh, no, I won't be done with boxing for 2 more days. I said, yeah, I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about the sheathing, because I'm thinking boxing is soffit. Right. And to me, that's cornice work. But he's like, no, that's the boxing is what holds we're resisting racking. That's what the inspection's for. So have you guys ever heard that term?
It's boxing in the house. I have heard that before, and I'm trying to remember who I heard it from and where they may have come from, but I've heard it called boxing in the house.
Interesting.
What else have you guys, this is kind of fun. What else weird have you heard, Travis?
I have worked really hard to eliminate it from my vocabulary, and I've had nightmares about it for enough years that I should have a long list. But, of course, now you put me on the spot. I've got nothing in this instant.
So I researched a few that I could think of, Patrick, and one of the big ones is a trimmer instead of a jack stud.
Yeah, I've
and
heard
I
that
did
too.
go into some building terminology glossary to find that a trimmer was originally meant to be the shortened floor joist in a stair opening. And I'm guessing that somebody just didn't realize that the term was specific to the floor joist and started using it for jack studs as well.
So you think it's wrong?
I don't know that it's wrong. I don't know that any of these are wrong. You know, language in its basic form is just conveying your ideas to another person. So as long as everybody on the job site understands what you're talking about, I won't get too worked up about one person calling it a trimmer and another calling it a jack stud, or somebody calling it boxing versus sheathing. The important thing is Travis knows what he's calling in for his inspection.
And there's definitely no reason to come to blows over it, right?
No, but I will get nasty over pronunciation. I've had enough conversations about masonry versus masonry.
Yeah.
People adding vowels where they don't belong is a is a pet peeve. So I'll be vociferously complaining to realtors everywhere that there is no A, and they are realtors. There are no doctors, just as there are no realtors. But there are realtors and there are doctors, and they're all working very hard. So yeah, let's all just get along, right?
If you guys want to write in with your suggestions for regional terms for construction things, I would love to hear them. One I remember that used to really get on my nerves was chimney, which is something you hear in northern New England inexplicably, but it's a chimney for those of you who have never heard that.
You could, if you got into the Boston accent and terminology just from that one area, you could do an hour-long podcast of just, converting Boston language to the rest of America, I think.
Consider that an invitation. If we have any Boston carpenters listening, I would love to talk to you about your regional descriptions of stuff. That would be cool. Well, everybody, stay tuned for the podcast after show, where we're going to have a special episode dedicated to building science. And I'm going to reveal Brian Pontalillo's blower door results. And I hope you all will tune in. If you haven't heard, you can listen to the after show by becoming a Fine Homebuilding All Access member. And I would encourage you to do that anyway, because it helps us keep the lights on. Do you guys have anything to add before we go?
I'm looking forward to hearing this number.
Oh my God, right?
The anticipation's killing me.
Well, unfortunately, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks to Ian, Travis, and Jeff for joining me, and thanks all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com, and please like, comment, or review us however you're listening. It helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Tune in for Building Science After Show.